Remember to use the web search tool when it would help answer the query. The query complexity appears to be a creative writing task that you can complete without searching. If the user asks for information on HFY sci-fi tropes that you're unsure about, then consider offering to search. The Naren sector was falling. Commander Tay watched the holographic display with all four of his eyes, the blue dots of Alliance ships blinking out one by one, as the red swarm of Void Dominion vessels consumed everything in their path. His grey skin had lost its usual luster, now pale and dull after weeks without proper rest. "Commander, we've lost contact with the 8th Defense Fleet," reported Officer Day, her voice trembling slightly. "The Dominion has broken through Sector 7. Tay's inner eyelids closed briefly in a gesture of mourning. The 8th Defense Fleet had been commanded by his old friend, Captain Mun. 10,000 lives, gone in an instant. "How much time do we have before they reach the evacuation transports?" Tay asked. 3 hours at most, Day replied. "The civilian ships are still loading. They need at least 5 hours to complete evacuation." The command center of the Alliance, Starbase hummed with desperate activity. Officers from 17 different species worked together, trying to hold back the inevitable. The air smelled of ozone and fear. "We must buy them more time," Tay said simply. He turned to his tactical officer, a tall, thin being named Poe. "Redirect all remaining combat vessels to defensive position Alpha. We will make our stand there." Poe looked up with concern. "Sir, that would leave our retreat path unprotected." "There will be no retreat," Tay replied. "Not for us." The words hung in the air, heavy but necessary. Everyone in the command center understood what this meant. They would sacrifice themselves to save the civilians. Outside the viewport, Tay could see the massive evacuation ships docked to the starbase. Thousands of families were rushing aboard, carrying what little they could. This was the Fourth World. They had evacuated this month. Soon there would be nowhere left to run. The Void Dominion had appeared at the edge of known space just 1 year ago. At first, the Alliance had welcomed them, hoping for peaceful contact. That hope died when the First Colony world went silent. By the time anyone understood the threat, 3 systems had already fallen. The Dominion ships were unlike anything the Alliance had ever encountered. Semi-organic vessels that could repair themselves, weapons that disintegrated matter at the molecular level, and worst of all, a hive mind that allowed them to coordinate with terrifying efficiency. They struck without warning, without mercy, and without any interest in communication. "Commander," called a voice from across the command center. Admiral June, the oldest serving officer in the Alliance fleet, approached slowly. His once proud uniform hung loosely on his frail frame, but his eyes remained sharp and clear. "Admiral, I didn't know you were still on the station," Tay said, standing straighter. "Where else would I be in our darkest hour?" June replied. He gestured toward a private meeting room. "Walk with me, Commander." Once the door closed behind them, June's formal demeanor dropped. "The Alliance Council held an emergency session yesterday. They've made a decision that I need to share with you." Tay waited, sensing that whatever came next would change everything. "We're sending an envoy to Earth," June said simply. Tay couldn't hide his shock. The humans, they've been isolated for nearly a century. They made it very clear they wanted nothing to do with us. "Circumstances have changed," June replied. "We're no longer in a position to respect their wishes." Tay paced the small room. Everyone knew the stories about humans, how they had helped form the Alliance in its early days, only to withdraw completely after the Proxima conflict. The official records claimed it was due to cultural incompatibility, but the whispers told a different story. The humans were asked to leave because their methods frightened the Council, Tay said carefully. "They won wars in ways that made us question whether victory was worth the cost." June nodded slowly. "And now we face extinction. The calculus has changed." A distant explosion rocked the station. The Dominion was getting closer. "Ambassador Rin departed for the Sol system 3 days ago," June continued. "If he succeeds, if the humans agree to help us." He left the thought unfinished. "And until then?" Tay asked. "Until then we fight. We hold. We survive." June placed a hand on Tay's shoulder. "I'm transferring command of the remaining defense forces to you. I will stay here to coordinate the evacuation." Tay wanted to object, But the look in June's eyes stopped him. This was how it had to be. Back in the command center, the tactical situation had worsened. The Dominion fleet had accelerated, sensing the Alliance's weakness. "All ships, form up at coordinates Alpha 7, Tay ordered as he returned to his position. "We make our stand here." As the Alliance vessels moved into position, a small diplomatic ship slipped away unnoticed, carrying Ambassador Rin on his desperate mission to Earth. None of them knew if the humans would listen, or if they even still existed as a unified people after so many years of isolation. Tay watched the enemy approach on the tactical display. In 2 hours, perhaps 3, it would all be over. Either they would succeed in evacuating the civilians, or they would not. Either way, Tay knew he would not live to see the next day. For the Alliance, he whispered to himself as he gave the order to engage. And somewhere beyond the front lines, beyond the desperate battles and falling worlds, a diplomatic vessel raced toward humanity's home, carrying with it the last hope of a dying alliance. Ambassador Rin's diplomatic vessel emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. His heart beat rapidly as he stared out the viewport. No Alliance diplomat had visited Earth in nearly a century. The stories about what humans had been doing in their isolation were many, but no one knew the truth. "Ambassador, you should see this," said Kim, his young aide. The worry in her voice made Rin move quickly to the main scanner display. What he saw made him freeze. Jupiter, the largest planet in the system, was surrounded by massive structures. Shipyards and space stations formed a ring around the gas giant. The scale was beyond anything Rin had ever seen before. "This can't be right," he whispered. "Run the scanners again." "I've checked 3 times," Kim replied, "and that's not all. Look at Mars." The red planet had been transformed. Great domes covered much of its surface, and in orbit, more shipyards floated silently, building vessels of war. "The humans have been preparing," Rin said, his voice filled with awe and fear. "But for what?" Before Kim could answer, the ship's communication system came alive. "Alliance vessel, this is Earth Defense Command," said a calm human voice. "You have entered restricted space. State your purpose immediately." Rin took a deep breath. "This is Ambassador Rin of the Alliance of Sentient Species. We come seeking urgent help. The Alliance faces extinction." There was a long pause before the voice returned. "Maintain your current position. Escort ships are on their way." Within minutes, 6 sleek black vessels appeared around them. They were unlike any ships Rin had ever seen, with no visible engines or weapons, yet somehow radiating power. "Follow our lead precisely," the human controller instructed. "Any deviation will be considered hostile." As they approached Earth, Rin was struck by how beautiful and untouched it looked. Blue oceans, white clouds, green and brown landmasses. Unlike so many homeworlds, Earth showed no signs of industrial damage or overcrowding. They were directed to a space station in orbit. When the airlock opened, Rin and Kim stepped into a stark white corridor where 2 humans waited, a man and a woman, both wearing simple grey uniforms without rank or decoration. "I am Director Park," said the woman. Her black hair was pulled back tightly, and her eyes seemed to look through Rin rather than at him. "This is General Lee. We will escort you to the Council." As they walked through the station, Rin noticed how different these humans were from those described in Alliance historical records. They moved with purpose and efficiency, speaking little. The station itself was clean, minimalist, with none of the art or cultural displays common in Alliance facilities. "You've changed," Rin said, carefully. Director Park glanced at him. "Isolation does that." They entered a large circular room, where 5 humans sat at a crescent-shaped table. The walls displayed star charts and what appeared to be real-time battle data from across the galaxy. "You've been watching us," Rin realized. "We've been watching everything," replied an older man at the center of the table. "I am Admiral Kang, head of the United Earth Defense Council. You claim the Alliance faces extinction. Explain." Rin placed a data crystal on the table. A hologram appeared, showing the Void Dominion's advance across Alliance space. "They appeared 1 year ago," Rin explained. "At first, we tried peaceful contact. By the time we understood the threat, it was too late. They've taken 17 systems already, billions dead or captured, "And your defenses?" asked a woman to Kang's right. "Useless," Rin admitted. "Their technology is unlike anything we've encountered. They have weapons that break matter apart at the molecular level, ships that can heal themselves, and they share a hive mind that makes their tactics perfect." Admiral Kang watched the hologram with narrow eyes. "And now you come to us. The same. Alliance that asked humans to leave galactic affairs because our methods were too extreme." Rin lowered his head. "Yes, the Alliance was wrong. We see that now." General Lee leaned forward. "If we help you fight this Dominion, what happens after? Will you once again call us barbarians when we do what must be done?" "I cannot speak for future generations," Rin said honestly, "but I can tell you this. Without your help, there will be no future generations to judge either of us." A heavy silence filled the room. The humans looked at each other, seeming to communicate without words. Finally, Director Park spoke. "You should know that we've been aware of the Void Dominion for some time. Our deep space probes detected their approach years before they reached Alliance space." "You knew?" Kim gasped. "Why didn't you warn us?" "Would you have believed us?" Park asked sharply. "Or would you have assumed it was a human trick to regain influence in galactic politics?" Rin couldn't answer. She was right. Admiral Kang stood, slowly. "The Earth Defense Council will need to discuss this privately. You will be shown to quarters and given food and rest." As they were led away, Rin caught a glimpse of another hologram, a massive ship unlike anything he had ever seen. The word Retribution was visible on its side. In their assigned quarters, Kim paced nervously. "Will they help us, Ambassador?" Rin stared out the window at Earth below. "I don't know, but one thing is clear. The humans never stopped preparing for war. The question is, were they preparing to defend against threats like the Dominion, or something else entirely?" Hours later, they were summoned back to the council chamber. Admiral Kang's face was grim but resolved. "The Dreadnought fleet will deploy within the week," he announced. "May the galaxy forgive what follows." Admiral Sun walked through the massive observation deck, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. Through the crystal-clear viewport that stretched for hundreds of meters, she watched as the shipyards of Jupiter came alive with activity. Enormous vessels were moving for the first time in decades, their dark hulls absorbing the light of the distant sun. "Reactor cores on all 8 primary dreadnoughts are now at full power," reported Commander Gill, following a step behind her. He was young for his position, but his eyes showed the wisdom that came from years of training for a war everyone knew would eventually come. "And the crews?" Sun asked, not taking her eyes off the largest ship in the fleet. The inevitable consequence was 7 kilometers from bow to stern, a floating city built for a single purpose. "The last cryostasis chambers are being opened now. Medical reports all crews are in optimal condition." Sun nodded. 93 years ago, when humanity decided to withdraw from galactic affairs, they had made 2 important decisions. First, they would build a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Second, they would preserve their best warriors through cryostasis, keeping their skills and knowledge intact for the day they would be needed again. That day had come. "Admiral," called a voice from behind them. Ambassador Rin stood at the entrance to the observation deck, his 4 eyes wide with amazement as he took in the view. "This is beyond anything I imagined." Sun gestured for him to join them. "You've only seen a small part of our preparations, Ambassador." As Rin approached the viewport, he gasped. The inevitable consequence was now fully illuminated as it moved away from its docking station. Behind it, 7 more dreadnoughts of similar size were awakening, surrounded by hundreds of smaller but still impressive warships. "The Alliance believed humans had perhaps a dozen capital ships," Rin said quietly. Sun allowed herself a small smile. "A misconception we never bothered to correct." A technician approached with a tablet. Sun reviewed the information and signed it with her finger. "The support fleet is at 70% activation and climbing," she informed Gill. "We'll be ready for full deployment in 6 hours." Rin seemed unable to look away from the fleet. How did you build all this without anyone knowing?" "We didn't hide," Sun replied. "We simply asked for privacy, and the Alliance was happy to give it to us. What you see here is the work of 3 generations of humans, preparing for a war we hoped would never come. She led Rin and Gil through a side door onto a smaller observation platform that extended out into space, protected only by a thin energy field. Below them, they could see directly into the open hangar bay of the inevitable consequence. Thousands of smaller craft were being prepared for launch. Fighters, bombers, and dropships filled the massive space. Workers scurried around like ants, performing final checks and loading supplies. "Would you like to see inside?" Sun asked. Before Rin could answer, a transport vessel docked with their platform. The door slid open, revealing a spotless interior. The journey to the Dreadnought took only minutes. When they stepped out into the main command deck, Rin froze in place. Hundreds of crew members worked at stations that filled the circular room. At the center, a 3-dimensional hologram showed the entire Sol system and beyond, with real-time data flowing across it. "Welcome to the heart of the inevitable consequence," Sun said, her voice filled with quiet pride. A tall woman approached them, her uniform slightly different from the others. "Admiral, the weapons systems are fully online. Engineering reports. The temporal shields are at maximum capacity." "Thank you, Captain Ho," Sun replied. "This is Ambassador Rin of the Alliance." Ho nodded politely to Rin, but did not offer her hand. "The ambassador may be interested in our main weapon systems. Should I arrange a demonstration?" Sun considered for a moment. "Yes, use the test asteroid in Sector 7. Ho turned to a nearby console and entered a series of commands. On the main hologram, a red marker appeared around a large asteroid floating. "Near the orbit of Mars. Target locked," announced a calm voice from the speakers. "Gravitational lance charged and ready." "Fire when ready," Ho ordered. There was no sound, no visible beam or explosion. The asteroid simply collapsed in on itself, crushed by an invisible force that reduced it to a ball of super-dense matter, no larger than a human fist. Rin took a step back. "That's impossible. You manipulated gravity itself." "One of several weapon systems unique to the Dreadnoughts," Sun explained. "We've had a century to advance our technology while isolated from the galaxy." As they continued the tour through the massive ship, Rin saw crew quarters that could house thousands, automated factories that could produce spare parts and ammunition, without needing external supplies and medical facilities, more advanced than anything in the Alliance. "You built all this because you knew someday you would be needed," Rin said quietly as they stood in the ship's memorial hall, where the names of every human who had worked on the fleet were recorded. Sun touched a name on the wall, her grandfather's. "We built it because we understood something the Alliance never did. Peace is not the natural state of the universe. Entropy is, chaos is, destruction is. Peace must be created and defended over and over again." Back on the command deck, a message came through from Earth Defense Command. Admiral Kang's face appeared on the main screen. "The Council has received reports from Alliance space," he announced. "The Void Dominion has begun its final assault on Keystone Station. If it falls, the Central Alliance worlds will be defenseless." Sun straightened her uniform. "We're ready, Admiral. The Dreadnought fleet can deploy immediately." Kang nodded solemnly. "Then you have your orders, Admiral Sun. Deploy the fleet and engage the enemy. Humanity returns to the stars today." As the communication ended, Sun turned to her crew. Throughout the massive ship, her words were broadcast to every compartment, every corridor. "For nearly a century we have prepared for this day. Not because we wanted war, but because we knew someday the galaxy would need what only humans could build. Today we fight not for ourselves alone, but for the right of all sentient beings to exist free from tyranny." The mighty engines of the inevitable consequence flared to life, followed by those of the entire human fleet. As Rin watched in wonder, hundreds of warships moved as one toward the jump point that would take them to war. Commander Tay stood on the bridge of the last remaining Alliance battleship at Keystone Station. The viewport showed hundreds of Void Dominion vessels closing in. Their black organic-looking ships moved with perfect coordination, like a swarm of insects sharing a single mind. "Time until their main force reaches our position?" Tay asked, his voice steady despite knowing these were likely his final moments. 7 minutes, Commander," replied Officer Day. Her hands trembled slightly as she worked the tactical controls. Civilian evacuation is only 60% complete. Tay closed his inner eyelids briefly. They wouldn't make it. After months of desperate retreat, this would be where the Alliance finally broke. Keystone Station was their last major stronghold. Once it fell, the Central Alliance worlds would be defenseless. All ships form a defensive sphere around the civilian transports, Tay ordered. We hold as long as we can. The remaining Alliance vessels, just 23 ships from what had once been a proud fleet of hundreds, moved into position. Their hulls bore the scars of countless battles, emergency repairs visible across their surfaces. "Sir," called the sensor operator, his voice suddenly confused. "I'm detecting energy readings at the edge of the system. Something's coming through the jump point." Tay felt a flicker of hope. Had the Alliance Council managed to send reinforcements? After all, the sensor operator's eyes widened. "Sir, these readings, they're unlike anything I've ever seen." Space itself seemed to tear open at the jump point. A massive ship emerged, angular, midnight black, and radiating power that disrupted sensors across the system. Then another appeared, and another. Soon, 8 enormous vessels had arrived, each larger than any Alliance capital ship. Behind them came hundreds of smaller craft, moving into perfect formation. "Unknown fleet, identify yourselves," demanded the Void Dominion commander on all frequencies, momentarily distracted from the attack. A calm human voice responded, broadcast on all channels. "This is Admiral Sun of the Earth Dreadnought Retribution. You are ordered to withdraw immediately from Alliance space." There was a moment of silence across all frequencies. Then the Dominion commander replied, "Humans, your species has hidden for generations. You will regret leaving your sanctuary." "I think not," Admiral Sun responded simply. The Dominion ships broke off their approach to Keystone Station, turning to face this new threat. Their hive mind recognized the humans as the greater danger. As one, they launched their attack. What followed left Tay and every Alliance officer watching in stunned silence. The human vessels didn't dodge the incoming fire. They didn't need to. Energy weapons that had torn through Alliance shields like paper seemed to bend around the human ships, directed away by invisible forces. "They have temporal shields," whispered Day in awe. "The weapons fire is being redirected. Through time itself, the humans answered with weapons of their own. Great waves of gravitational distortion swept out from the lead dreadnought, catching dozens of Dominion vessels and crushing them into dense balls of twisted metal. Fighter craft, smaller than shuttles, darted between enemy ships with impossible speed and precision, their pilots moving as if they could predict the enemy's actions. A group of Dominion destroyers managed to surround one of the smaller human vessels. It was a tenth the size of a dreadnought, a destroyer by human standards but still larger than most Alliance cruisers. By all logic, it should have been quickly overwhelmed. Instead, it fought with a ferocity that seemed almost personal. Point defense. Systems fired with perfect accuracy, intercepting incoming missiles. When a Dominion ship managed to get close enough for a ramming attack, the human vessel simply shifted, somehow altering its position in space without visible propulsion. "They're not using standard engines," the Alliance engineering officer reported. "They're manipulating space-time itself for movement." Over the next hour, Tay and his crew watched as the human fleet systematically dismantled the Dominion forces. These were not the desperate holding actions the Alliance had been fighting for months. This was something else entirely, a carefully orchestrated dance of destruction. The humans didn't just fight the enemy, they controlled the battlefield itself. Most shocking of all was when the Dominion commander ordered a retreat. In all the months of war, this had never happened before. The Dominion always pressed forward, sacrificing ships without hesitation to achieve their objectives. But now, faced with the human dreadnoughts, they were running. "Commander," said Day, her voice filled with disbelief, "they're actually retreating." Tay couldn't find words to respond. He simply watched as the remaining Dominion ships jumped away, leaving the human fleet in command of the space around Keystone Station. A communication request came through on the Alliance command frequency. Tay hesitated only briefly before accepting. Admiral Sun's face appeared on the main screen. She was older than Tay had expected, with lines of experience around her eyes, but those eyes burned with fierce determination. "Commander Tay," she said, "the Earth Defense Council sends its regards to the Alliance. We would like to coordinate our next moves with your remaining forces." "Admiral?" Tay managed to reply, still processing what he had just witnessed. "Thank you. Without your arrival, we would have been lost." Sun's expression softened slightly. "No thanks are needed. We've been monitoring the situation for some time. I apologize that we could not arrive sooner." "Your timing seems perfect from where I stand," Tay said. "This was merely the beginning," Sun responded, her voice becoming serious again. "The Dominion will adapt to our tactics. They learn quickly. We must press our advantage while we have it." Later, aboard the human flagship Retribution, Tay stood in the massive war room with other Alliance commanders who had survived. They gathered around a holographic display showing the current positions of Dominion forces across 3 sectors. "They're consolidating their fleets here," Sun explained, pointing to a star system near the edge of Alliance space. "We believe this is their main staging area." "That system is heavily defended," said Captain Ryu, one of the few Alliance captains with a ship still intact enough to fight. "We tried to scout it 4 months ago, lost 2 stealth frigates just approaching the outer planets." "The Dominion. Defenses are formidable," Sun agreed, "but they've never faced Dreadnoughts before." She gestured, and the hologram changed to show a detailed attack plan. "We will strike in 3 days, not just to defend, but to take the fight to them." As the meeting concluded, Tay found himself alone with Admiral Sun. He had to ask the question that had been bothering him since the battle. "Admiral, your ships, your weapons, they're beyond anything I thought possible. You could have built this fleet and conquered the galaxy yourselves. Why did humans isolate themselves all these years?" Sun was quiet for a moment before answering. "Because we knew that power like this comes with a responsibility. The galaxy feared what humans might become if we embraced our capacity for warfare. That fear wasn't entirely misplaced." She looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. "We chose isolation to perfect our defenses without alarming our allies. We chose to wait until we were needed rather than impose our presence where it wasn't welcome." "And now?" Tay asked. "Now," Sun said, her voice gaining strength, "we show the Dominion why they should have stayed far away from this galaxy. The counter-offensive begins tomorrow." The war room aboard the Inevitable Consequence hummed with activity. Admiral Sun stood at the center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of both human and Dominion fleets across 3 sectors of space. Alliance commanders and human officers worked side by side, a sight that would have been unimaginable just weeks ago. "The Dominion is adapting to our tactics faster than expected," reported Commander Gill. "The hive mind is learning from each encounter." Sun nodded. This was not surprising. The Void Dominion's greatest strength was their shared consciousness, a network that allowed instant communication and perfect coordination across their entire fleet. "That is why we must implement Operation Singularity now," she said. "We won't get another chance." Dr. John, the lead scientist on the project, stepped forward. He was smaller than most of the military personnel, with gentle eyes that seemed out of place in this room of warriors. "The device is ready, Admiral," he said, "but I must again express my concerns about the ethical implications." "Noted, Doctor," Sun replied, her voice softening slightly. "But we've discussed this. The alternative is the extinction of 17 sentient species." Commander Tay, who had been quietly observing from the side of the room, looked between them with curiosity. "What exactly is Operation Singularity?" Sun gestured to Dr. Jun to explain. "The Dominion's power comes from their hive mind," Jun began. "It allows them to think and act as one entity across vast distances. But we've discovered the quantum frequency that connects them. This device," he pointed to a small object displayed as a hologram, "can disrupt that connection." "You can cut them off from each other?" Tay asked, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he processed this. "Not just cut them off," Jun replied. "The device will isolate each individual consciousness within the Dominion. For most of them, it will be the first time they've ever experienced individual thought." Tay looked stunned. That would be traumatic, Jun finished for him. Yes, many of them have never known what it means to be alone in their own minds. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. It wasn't a conventional weapon that destroyed bodies. It was something that would fundamentally change minds. The device has been loaded onto the stealth vessel Silent Dawn, Sun continued after a moment. It will launch in 1 hour. In the meantime, the Dreadnought fleet will engage the main Dominion forces here. She pointed to a star system near the edge of Alliance space. This is their central command hub, asked Captain Ryu. Yes, and it's heavily defended, Sun confirmed. Our attack must be convincing enough that they don't detect our true objective. The battle plan was set in motion. The 8 human Dreadnoughts, accompanied by their support fleets and the remaining Alliance vessels, jumped into position at the edge of the target system. The Dominion responded immediately, their ships moving with the eerie precision that came from shared consciousness. From the bridge of the Retribution, Admiral Sun watched as the first wave of Dominion ships approached. All vessels, engage. As planned. Remember, we need to hold their attention for 45 minutes. The human fleet unleashed a display of firepower that would have been enough to end most conflicts in the galaxy. Gravitational weapons crushed Dominion cruisers. Temporal shields deflected enemy fire. Fighter squadrons executed maneuvers that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Yet the Dominion fought back with increasing effectiveness. With each passing minute, they adapted to human tactics, finding weaknesses, exploiting patterns. Ships on. Both sides began to full. 20 minutes until the Silent Dawn reaches position, reported the communications officer. Sun watched as a human destroyer took a direct hit from a Dominion energy weapon. The ship's shields failed and its hull began to break apart. Direct rescue vessels to Grid 7, save as many crew as possible. The battle grew more intense. The Dominion seemed to sense that something was wrong. This attack was too direct, too obvious for the humans who had shown such tactical sophistication. They're sending ships to search the outer system, warned Commander Gill. They might find the Silent Dawn. Divert the 3rd Squadron to intercept, Sun ordered. They must not detect our true purpose. The minutes ticked by. Each one paid. For in lives and ships. Alliance vessels fought alongside human craft, their crews working with a desperate courage born from months of defeat. 5 minutes to device activation, came the report. Sun opened a channel to all human ships. All vessels prepare for Protocol Omega. Shield your systems according to specifications. The human ships began emitting a unique energy field that would protect their electronics from the coming disruption. The Alliance ships, hastily retrofitted with human technology, did the same. Device active in 3, 2, 1. There was no visible change, no explosion or energy wave. But across the battlefield, the Dominion fleet suddenly lost all coordination. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation began to drift apart. Some collided with each other. Others fired weapons in random directions or shut down completely. It's working, whispered Tay, who stood on the bridge beside Sun. Their hive mind is breaking apart. On the communications channels, something unprecedented began to happen. Individual Dominion commanders were sending messages, confused, frightened, angry messages. "What have you done to us?" came one transmission. The voices. "They're gone, I can't hear the others." "All ships cease fire," Sun ordered. "Open a channel to any Dominion vessel willing to communicate." The former Hive commander's ship was identified, a massive organic-looking vessel at the center of the Dominion formation. It had stopped firing but remained operational. "This is Admiral Sun of the human Dreadnought fleet," she broadcasted. "Your ships are now operating independently. Your hive mind has been temporarily disrupted. We offer you a choice. Continue fighting as individuals or agree to negotiations." There was a long silence, then a response. "This is, I am Individual 01. I was once the coordinating node of the collective. I request communication." 3 days later, Sun sat across from Individual 01 in a neutral meeting room aboard Keystone Station. The being that had once directed the destruction of entire worlds looked lost and vulnerable, its smooth grey skin now showing stress patterns. "You could have destroyed us completely," said Individual 001. Your dreadnoughts had the power. Why? Didn't you? Because extinction is precisely what we fought to prevent, Sun replied. Even yours. Individual 001 seemed to consider this. We have never known individual existence. It is painful, lonely. Is this how you always feel? Yes, Sun said simply. But we also know the joy of connection by choice, not by force. You can learn this too. As peace negotiations continued, humans and Alliance members worked together to rebuild what had been destroyed. The Dominion, now composed of billions of newly individual beings, began the difficult process of creating a society based on choice rather than compulsion. Commander Tay found Admiral Sun on an observation deck looking out at the stars. Your dreadnought saved us all, he said. But I wonder, what happens when this war fades from memory? Will the galaxy once again fear human power? Sun watched as her fleet performed maintenance operations nearby, the massive ships that had turned the tide of war now helping to rebuild. That fear kept us isolated for generations, she said finally. Perhaps now both humans and the Alliance have learned the same lesson. True strength lies not in separation, but in standing together despite our differences. As new relations formed between once distant species, the human dreadnoughts remained, visible in Alliance space, not as weapons of war but as guardians of a peace that embraced all sentient beings, even former enemies.